All right, so how about a short one? Let's talk a little bit about the limitations and the advantages of doing a sociological analysis. I mean, there are lots of different ways that you could understand your society. Art gives us great insight into the nature of our society, literature, um, um, specifically, or film or um, music. Philosophy can give us some great insight into human nature, the humanities in general, right? So there are lots of different ways that we can come to a deeper and even in many ways accurate understanding of the nature of our society. So what is it specifically that's useful about a scientific approach? And what are some of the consequences? Or costs, I should say? What are some of the limitations? So we'll start with limitations. Um, Sociology does allow for an understanding of the impact and the operation of structure. So it's going to give us really, really highly accurate insights about group level phenomena. Um, and while we do collect data from individuals, and you can use it to understand some individual behavior, especially the kind of behavior that unfolds um, in specific kinds of social settings, it really is going to be hard for us to use sociology to make predictions about what will happen to an individual person. So when sociology makes statements about the way the social world works, they make them in terms of probabilities. We talk about things um, in probabilistic fashion. And what that means, of course, is that we're identifying forces with a high likelihood, but not a certainty of influencing human behavior. Um, it is a little bit of a limitation because we can't say definitively that a thing is going to happen to a particular person, while we can say that things will certainly happen to the group that that person is a member of. Right? It may still not apply at the individual level. So we have to sort of cage our language and express things in terms of probabilities rather than making definitive or declarative statements. Sort of like, if you get a college degree, you will be successful. That is just simply something we can't say. Um, Whereas we can say with absolute certainty that the group of people who have college degrees are more successful than the group of people who only have high school diplomas. Um, a practical consequence of this is, and believe me, this has come up a lot in my years and years of teaching. You will always be able to find a counterfactual. You will always be able to find or a counterexample, I should say. Right? If I were to say that people with college degrees are more successful than people without college degrees, you would say, "But I know a guy," or "My uncle," right? And the funny thing is, we'd both be right because you're making a statement about an individual person. I'm making a statement about a group of people, and uh, and so that is kind of one of the limiting factors of a sociological analysis. Um, but I think that's vastly outweighed by the advantages. The advantages of a sociological analysis are significant. First of all, scientific methods have greater accuracy, right? Within science, there's a bias toward what we call validity and reliability. So, validity, of course, probably might have been exposed to this in a science class at some point, but validity is the degree to which you're measuring the thing that you intend to measure. And reliability is the ability to get repeated results when you do the same sort of trial, right? When you take that same research design, you go out and you apply it to a different sample or a different set of cases, and you find the same pattern, um, over multiple trials. So reliability and validity are kind of a consequence of how science goes about doing its thing, right? So validity comes from really good theory. Reliability comes from rigorous methods and good research design. So there's a bias there toward greater accuracy. Scientific methods generate more accurate understandings of the social world. Um, A second benefit or a second advantage of taking this approach is that scientific methods remove a lot of our individual or our subjective biases. Everybody is biased. Everybody, um, um, even scientists, can't really avoid the impact of subjectivity. The fact that you choose to study subject A rather than subject B is the introduction of bias into your research, right? What you're saying there is that I think that this is more important than this, and so that is one way in which bias is kind of an ever-present feature um, of research. So you can't really get away from it, but what you can do is you can significantly minimize it. Um, Science gets us closer to objectivity, even though it does not actually create an objective perspective from which to evaluate or understand things. But I gotta say that it's still better than common sense. It's still better than tradition. It's still better than some of the past methods, uh, which are even more biased than what's ultimately going to be the product under a scientific approach. And the third advantage, and I think this one is really for me the selling point. Scientific methods have the ability to create an established baseline of agreed upon facts, and an agreed upon set of facts allows people to have a sort of productive discussion, right? The conversation can kind of move forward to either what we do in light of those facts or how we continue to add to our understanding, or where we're going to go find the next set of things that are factually true about the world around us. That does not mean that everybody is going to embrace, reality. Not everybody is going to embrace factual truth. We've certainly seen an abundance of that in the last couple of years. But what happens is that there's a concept in science called falsifiability. And falsifiability applies to things that can be disproven through observation or measurement or testing, right? So if somebody makes a claim about a particular phenomenon or a particular topic, it is possible to confirm or disprove that assertion. So, I've got a little seltzer here, right? If I were to say seltzer is awesome, or if I were to say seltzer sucks, there's no way to disprove that, right? It's an opinion. It's entirely subjective. There's no suckometer. Beep, 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 beep. You can't put it up against the device and say, "Oh my God, he's right. It sucks." That's sort of a limitation, right? We can't. Those kinds of things don't fall within the scope of science. If, on the other hand, I say something like, this can contains 72 ounces of fluid, well, now we're in the realm of science, right? We can pour the contents of this can into a graduated cylinder, and either there are 72 ounces of fluid or there aren't. If there aren't, we dismiss my claim and move on. Now, can I go on believing that there are 72 ounces of fluid in this can? Absolutely. I'm free to believe whatever the hell I want to believe. But what happens for the rest of us is we're not obligated to continue to pay attention to me, right? Because I'm clearly just being a crank. So falsifiability, right? Again, falsifiability isn't saying something is false, but falsifiability says that if something is false, we can confirm that. We can demonstrate that through observation or through measurement or through testing of some sort. And the things that can be falsified, all the things that can be falsified, that is the stuff that falls within the scope of science. And it turns out that there is a great deal about the social world that falls within that territory. And so while we can't speak definitively to everything in the social world, those things in the social world that are kind of empirical and concrete and real are very much within the scope of the abilities of science to confirm those things. And then, of course, like I said, once we have an agreement on the nature of the world around us, we can then move to the next. Topic or the next area of interest, and continue to build our knowledge base. And that's how we progress, little bits at a time. All right, I said this one was going to be short, and there you go. All right, so take care. I'll see you next time.